Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 2 updated rankings, injury report, and DraftKings Millionaire Maker ownership projections. The Chalk Report. That's coming up a little bit later on with Geoff Ulrich from DK Live. Hit the description for all the updated rankings and the time codes for when we talk about each of the individual things if you don't want to hear me yammer on the entire time. But you should, because I have a giveaway for 20 DraftKings dollars. It's a draw. Give the episode a like. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comments and your 3 favorite Ds on the Millionaire Maker slate for Week 2. Boom, you're in the draw. You could win. I'll announce the winners on Monday's live show, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, waiver wire and recap with Jake Seeley. Plus, if you got more questions, I'm going to be live 10 a.m. Sunday morning on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Myself, Gary and Thorne, and potentially a surprise guest along for the ride. We'll be breaking down all the inactives, updated rankings, injuries, weather, whatever you got, plus taking your questions 10 a.m. till 11:25 a.m. We'll be here. Come hang with us. What else are you doing on a Sunday morning besides? Probably a lot. Put us on in the background. Still doesn't matter. It's going to be a fun time. We had a great Week 1. Hopefully, we'll have a better Week 2. And if you don't have time to tune in at 10 a.m., it'll be up on the iTunes feed and all the podcast feeds at around 11:15 a.m. the first hour. So you can still consume it that way while you're doing chores around the house, out getting groceries, whatever the fuck you do on a Sunday morning before football starts. I don't know. I'm setting lineups and doing shows. Either way, let's get into this Thursday night game. The big news coming out of this, Joe Mixon needs some surgery on his knee. This is what limited him to just 39 offensive snaps against the Ravens on Thursday night. That makes Gio Bernard the immediate waiver wire pickup. If he was not picked up already, he's under 60% owned, so he'll top the waiver wire rankings, I'm pretty sure, come Monday. But the next 3 games for the Bengals: at Carolina, bad matchup; at Atlanta, pretty decent matchup; and then at home against Miami. If Mixon's not back by then, it could be 2 to 4 weeks. He's having his knee surgery, arthroscopic knee surgery, to get stuff cleaned up on Saturday. At least that's what Adam Schefter reports. So, 2 games at least it looks like for Mixon. Maybe 3, could be 4, but I bet on the 2 at least, and one of those is a really bad matchup. So for PPR, it probably doesn't matter because Gio Bernard will be heavily involved in the passing game. For standard, I can't imagine him being ranked inside the top 20 going into Week 3, so it's not a priority yet. I wouldn't dump all my fab money on it, but that's a situation that we're dealing with the Bengals backfield. I guess the other takeaway, at least from the running back perspective, on Thursday night was people were really bummed out by Alex Collins' 12 touches. I was very encouraged he was involved in the passing game. It was not a very good game script for him, falling behind by so early. You'd think that would lead to more Buck Allen, but the thing that I was more concerned about was Buck Allen for the second straight week stealing his 1-yard touchdown. That's not good. But Collins still had a very productive game. If he had scored a touchdown in that game, he'd be a fringe running back 1 for the week. So the efficiency was there. That's what we liked about Alex Collins going into the season. He's probably never going to end up with the volume that I had really hoped for coming into the year. But Kenneth Dixon's been put on IR. It's just the 2 of them there. And as long as Buck Allen starts getting stuffed a few times on the 1-yard line, maybe Alex Collins can reassert himself in that role. So he's probably a pretty decent buy low because people are really bummed out from what he's doing. But in PPR scoring, he scored 12 points. Standard 9 points. Like, that's not killing you as a running back too, and you could probably get him for a lot less than that right now. So I'd test the market to see if you can just kind of pry him away from someone. He's going to be a solid low-end running back too. Probably not what you drafted him as, but it's not the end of the world. It could be way worse. You could have started your draft, I don't know, let's see, Joe Mixon, Le'Veon Bell, and Devonta Freeman, who is also not playing this week. He's going to miss the game against Carolina. It wasn't a great matchup to begin with Devonta Freeman, but that means Tevin Coleman is going to assume that workhorse role. Devonta Freeman hasn't officially been declared out as yet, but he hasn't practiced all week, and he is not expected to play. Generally speaking, if you do not play on a Friday, you are not going to play during the week. I have Tevin Coleman bumped up now to running back 14 in my Week 2 rankings. Again, hit the description or just go to dkplaybook.com or my Facebook page, and you can find all the links to everything right there and see the entire list of players. I do like Coleman. It's a really tough matchup, so he's going to need to get involved in the passing game, but there's not a whole lot else going on. Smith's going to back him up, but we don't really know how big of a workload he's going to see. I can see them trying to run Tevin Coleman into the ground in this matchup. So it's a situation that I like, and he's a start if you have him on your team. It's already paying dividends for taking the back end of that share. Next up, we have Jacksonville, and this is the toughest one probably of the week to figure out. Leonard Fournette has not practiced any day this week with this hamstring injury. Now, all of a sudden, TJ Yeldon has popped up on the injury report. With an ankle injury, he practiced in a limited capacity on Friday. Right now, in my rankings, I have Fournette as out and TJ Yeldon as in, and I have him ranked in PPR formats as running back number 17. Here's the issue. This game starts at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time. So you're not going to know early in the day to make these decisions. So if you have the flexibility of another running back going later on that day, then boom, it's not that big of a problem. I would not play Fournette regardless if he plays or not. It's too big of a risk. And the whole point being that if Fournette plays, and you play him, he could play 3 snaps and be out of this game immediately. So even if both of them are active, I would still play Yeldon for the safety purposes over Fournette. I'm not going to be incredibly bummed out if I bench Fournette and he goes off on my bench. At least I know he's healthy. If I have him in my lineup and he scores 0 points, that's a weekender. And you just don't want that right now. In the face of critical options that you may have, I'm sure you have someone else you can plug in at running back. I think the move right now would be, if you want to play Yeldon or play someone else, use the flex spot on your team, as this is like you can take Yeldon out, or you can move Yeldon in for a tight end or a receiver, whoever it may be. Same as in DraftKings scoring. These are guys, just avoid Fournette completely, but if Fournette is ruled out, you can late swap onto TJ Yeldon in the spot. It does look like he's going to be in store for a lot of volume, unless this ankle is more severe than maybe it looks like. Then you see some Corey Grant, and then none of them are good plays. But for me right now, if there is no Fournette, Yeldon is a running back 2 start, and I would still start Yeldon over Fournette even if both of them play, but none of them are priority starts by any means. On the other side of the ball, more confusion at running back. Sony Michel practiced on a limited basis on Friday, as did Rex Burkhead with that concussion. I've adjusted my rankings. I now have James White as the highest of the Patriots running back. None of them crack the top 24, which would be RB2 territory. You're not going to know. I think it goes White, then Burkhead, then Michel. We'll see Michel ease back in. It depends on how healthy Burkhead really is. He could really do most of the damage on the ground, because I doubt, even if James White ends up playing a lot of snaps, I doubt he's going to see that many carries. That's still going to go to Rex Burkhead if he's healthy enough to play. It's just none of them are super trustworthy coming into the week. It's a bizarre situation, again, where this game is later. You're not going to know in the morning. So in the face, you need to figure out a better option. If you have none, you're going to have to roll the dice on it. If not, just play the safer guy. San Francisco, Marquise Goodwin and his quad or thigh or whatever the hell they're reporting it as now, he's out against the Lions week 2. I bumped up Dante Pettis inside the top 40. Pierre Garçon still a fringe wide receiver 3. I like him a little bit more than Pettis, but Pettis played pretty well in absence of Marquise Goodwin week 1 in a far tougher matchup up against the Vikings. And you'd think that Darius Slay, who's playing, might take out Garçon, opening up a lot for Dante Pettis. Better GPP sleeper for DraftKings, or a plug-and-play if you need him in a deeper league. He's widely available, and the upside looks pretty good. Not as good as George Kittle's upside, mind you, in that offense, but someone that it's hard to trust someone like Dante Pettis in this spot, but the opportunity is there to really go forth with it. So Dante Pettis becomes a nice pickup in this spot. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are both questionable for week 2 with the Vikings. I think they're both going to play. It's hard to put too much trust, especially in Aaron Rodgers, in the spot with an attacking defensive guy who's going to be relatively immobile with a knee injury. And that shoulder problem for Devontae Adams could open up more for Randall Cobb, but I'm still playing Adams. I guess I would severely decrease the ranking of Devontae Adams if all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers declared out and Deshaun Kaiser is starting. But if Rodgers is playing, you kind of got to roll with Devontae Adams of where you drafted him, what the upside is, even in this matchup. It's not a great matchup. He's like a mid-tier wide receiver 2 for me this week, but one still with plenty of upside as long as Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball. Rodgers, on the other hand, is probably just an avoid on DraftKings, although he might throw the ball more now that he is immobile. They just might put him back in shotgun, and he might throw the ball 45 times, which could be super fantasy beneficial. I have him at quarterback number 10 for the week. He's not a sit for me because I would feel just devastated if I benched Aaron Rodgers and he threw 6 touchdowns, because Aaron Rodgers is capable of that, especially in a spot, even against a tougher defense, where he might throw the ball so many times, because lining up under center might be a bit of a task for him. So that's a tricky situation. It's hard to bench Aaron Rodgers. So you'd probably just play them both and hope they're not as injured as it appears. That's the extent of it. In Tennessee, Delanie Walker is out for the year. Titans coach Mike Vrabel said he expects both Marcus Mariota and Blaine Gabbert to play Sunday, week 2 against the Texans. That sounds like fun. Just play the Texans defense. That sounds a whole lot better. Corey Davis and his hamstring was taken off the injury report, so that's good news. I wish he had someone healthy throwing. Well, I wish he had someone healthy in Marcus Mariota, or not Blaine Gabbert throwing him the ball. But he did see double-digit targets last week. You got to roll the dice on him here, especially because the hamstring hasn't been as big of a problem as maybe we thought earlier in the week. He's one of the only healthy members of this offense, like him and like Jonnu Smith, who a lot of people are liking as a trendy sleeper at the tight end position to fill in for Delanie Walker. But it might really depend on who's throwing him the ball. You're not sitting Corey Davis unless you got really good options at receiver. He's someone I'd roll out and just hope that he can make it all up through volume in the sense in a game where, who knows, they might have to throw the ball a ton. He might see a market share of like 40%. That's hard to pass on for someone like Corey Davis, and we know the talent that he has, so that's a gamble I'm willing to take. The bigger problem might be, I mean, you have the quarterback problems, 2 tackles both out. Jack Conklin is ACL, Taylor Lewin and his concussion are both out against the Texans, so again, Texans D, fire them up week 2 against the Texans. It's going to be a whole lot of pressure on whoever is playing quarterback. On the Houston side of the ball, Bill O'Brien said he's confident Will Fuller will play. Keep up to date on that. He makes a really nice sort of boomer bust type option against this Tennessee team. We saw how well Deshaun Watson has played with him. If he's on the field, you probably end up playing him, and DeAndre Hopkins and his foot injury are good to go for week 2. In Tampa Bay, I thought this was a long shot as the week went along, but Deshaun Jackson in a revenge game against the Eagles is going to play. It looks like he practiced on full on Friday. The concussion shoulder, not a problem anymore. I've downgraded Chris Godwin in my wide receiver rankings. Tough matchup against Philly, by the way. They're both like outside of the top 36, which would make them like flex type plays. I still prefer Godwin just a hair over Deshaun Jackson. Even after last week, it was Godwin who was still playing the majority of the snaps over Deshaun Jackson in this spot. There's just so much going on in this Tampa Bay offense. If they don't score almost 50 points every single week, it's going to be tough for them to really produce fantasy days. Even on DraftKings, I'll mention later on with Geoff Ulrich that Godwin's a part of that cluster that I like. That was assuming Deshaun Jackson wouldn't play. Now that he is playing, you probably cross him off the list. But still a nice bench stash for the rest of the year. I do think that he does have some upside here. And finally, Carolina, as the major injury, is just down another offensive lineman. Right guard Trey Turner is out with a concussion. That adds to Darrell Williams, who is out for basically the year with a knee injury from last week, adding on to Matt Khalil, who's out for the year from the preseason. That's just a decimated offensive line, so you hope that gets Christian McCaffrey more involved in the passing game. Fortunately for them, Atlanta's banged up on the defensive side of the ball, so it's just going to be a really rough spot. This might be a really poorly played game, sloppily played game because of so many injuries that are happening here. But I don't think I'm going to decrease Christian McCaffrey at all because of this, because of what he can make up through the receiving game, like I mentioned. Quick hitters, Ben Roethlisberger is going to play. I think we all kind of knew that anyway. Devontae Parker and his finger, questionable for week 2 against the Jets, but he did get into full practice on Friday. Expect him to play. Not a great start, and it hurts the bottom line of Kenny Stills, but Kenny Stills is still the play against the Jets for the Dolphins. Paul Richardson did not practice on Friday with a shoulder injury. I would not expect him to play. You don't practice Friday. Generally speaking, you do not play on Sunday. So you can elevate Josh Doxson just a hair. Jamison Crowder and Jordan Reed still the better plays for the Skins on Sunday in that receiving game. Jermaine Gresham and his Achilles injury is questionable for week 2 with the Rams. If he plays, it hurts Ricky Seals-Jones. He's probably not going to play, though, so just keep an eye on that one. Again, Sunday morning, 10 a.m., we'll have all these updates and all what the latest news is going to be. LeGarrette Blount and his shoulder is questionable for week 2 against the Niners. Probably going to play. Marshawn Lynch and his shoulder taken off the injury report. He will play against Denver. David Johnson was also taken off the injury report, so he's full fire go, but this might hurt a little bit as right tackle Andre Smith is out with an elbow injury for the Cardinals in week 2, so that might hurt the bottom line, at least in terms of running lanes. Maybe, again, it just gets him more involved in a passing situation where frankly, how much were they really going to run against the Rams anyway? This is basically going to be a passing game as 12-point underdogs here. The Saints left guard Andres Pete will play with his quad injury week 2. That's good news. Ted Ginn also was taken off the injury report on Friday, so he's fired up, good to go for the Saints at home against Cleveland. Marlon Mack was a full participant on Friday at practice. I bumped him and Jordan Wilkins both down in the running back rankings since I have no idea which one of them is going to be the stakeholder of the majority of the touches, if it's any of them. I think that Nyheim Hines, especially in PPR scoring, is the Colts back to play. If there is one you need to play, it's Hines. Darren Sproles is out for week 2 against the Buccaneers. I've upgraded Corey Clement and left Jay Ajayi where he is, but maybe Jay Ajayi will see some extra run in the passing game because he saw 0 in week 1. We'll see how that turns out, but solid play. He's a running back 2 for me. Needs to score a touchdown, generally speaking, but his market share and snap share should go up in the situation unless they're just like, hey, let's play some more Wendell Smallwood. Wouldn't put it past Doug Peterson in this situation. Finally, Travis Benjamin on the Chargers missed practice on Friday with a foot injury. They're hopeful he can play against the Bills. Wouldn't count on it. Fire up some Mike Williams in that spot, and even Terrell the Gazelle Williams, if you are just desperate at wide receiver. I do like Mike Williams both as a season-long play, as a back-end flex, or wide receiver 3 in PPR scoring, as a cheap DraftKings option as well. Finally, the Dolphins lost left guard Josh Sitton for the remainder of the season with a torn rotator cuff, as it just proves on the offensive line the Dolphins can't have nice things. Coming up, breaking down the DraftKings ownership for the Millionaire Maker in week 2, it's Geoff Ulrich. Let's move on the Pat Mayo experience to the DraftKings ownership projections. We'll be using fansharesports.com's tags. We'll talk about the 3 top players from each position. I'll give you my players that I think that are going to be the highest owned at each position. But to break that down with me and talk about some potential pivot plays and some lineup strategies for week 2 on DraftKings from DK Live, it is Geoff Ulrich. What is happening, my man?
Oh, not too much. Just getting ready for the old week 2 bounce back here, hopefully.
Week 1, wasn't a disaster, but, it wasn't great for me. Dink at Daily Roto ended up on the Monday night one, ended up winning, ended up winning 100K. A Daily Roto user actually won $1 million on the weekend. So that was really nice to see. A couple people I saw spike all around the industry, but it was just a lot of treading water for me.
Yeah, no, I saw Drew have a big week. That was awesome, obviously. I myself, I went way overweight on Tyreek Hill, which is good, but I faded James Conner. So I just didn't get the right mix, obviously. You can fade James Conner last week and have a big lineup. But, it really wasn't that bad. But, when you play a lot of big GPPs, you either have a big spike week or you don't. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah, so let's get back on the horse for week 2. We did mention some of those Daily Roto guys, and to give them a shout out, if you want 10% off the NFL package till the end of the year, use the promo code THEPME. Get yourself 10% off. It's that easy. Just go to dailyroto.com. First of all, and fansharesports.com. I got no promo code, but you should definitely go use them because that's what we're using for this. Let's start with running backs and the most tagged players of the week. The guys at Fanshare Sports monitor everything from around the industry and check in on different podcasts, on articles, and who's being talked about the most. We look at the running backs. James Conner is number 1. Alvin Kamara is number 2. And Christian McCaffrey is number 3 on that list. Do you think that that's how it's going to break down? Do you think that Kamara will be substantially more owned than Gurley if we talk about the very top end? Because I think objectively, I might like Gurley a little bit better.
Yeah, the spot for Todd Gurley is massive. The Rams have the 2nd highest implied team total. They're at home. They're 13-point favorites. And there's no backup running back that, I think he ceded 1 carry last week. So he's one of the rare breed of guys who's just going to be out there every snap, right? I do think Kamara is going to be higher owned. I just feel like people are so wrapped up in this New Orleans offense. They have the terrible defense that they just figure, 30 points for Alvin Kamara is like a lock every week now. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think you could see a bounce back from the Saints defense, which might put, a cap on Kamara's upside eventually. So I agree. I think I'm not sure how much less Todd Gurley's going to be owned, but it's going to be, I think, at least 5%, maybe more. So does definitely would draw me if I'm deciding between those two. Because, Todd Gurley at 9,200, his salary went down. And we were talking about this earlier in the week. He really is undervalued at 9,200 in my opinion.
Well, the big problem is, like, you could try to construct a lineup where you fit both of them in, and in my initial projections, I had them both being fairly highly owned. I have Gurley pushing 20%, but I have Kamara pushing around 30%. Like, the discrepancy could be anywhere from, like, 4 to 10% in the Millionaire Maker by the time it shakes down, because this stuff is not an exact science by any means. But James Conner is going to be even higher owned than that I don't think anyone's doing the double pay up. And would that even be feasible in a lineup this week? Because it's hard to pay. It's hard to pay down it's tough to pay down at receiver, especially. And it would be easier to pay down at running back, but you're already using the 2 highest owned or highest priced running backs. Then you have like 2 tight ends in your lineup, I guess.
Well, okay. I'll start by saying this. I don't think that's like the optimal strategy this week to pay up for both these guys. But if you were going to do it, a lot of value opened up today. Like, Darren Sproles is out. Corey Clement's only 3,500. A lot more value at receiver. Like, I don't think Marquise Goodwin is going to play. You got Dante Pettis there, only at 4K. So, and you have some cheap tight ends in play as well. So I think the values there, you can make it work. I don't think it's optimal because you're going to end up fading guys like Brown, Tyreek Hill, some of the good receivers at 6K. I just don't think that's optimal. You could do it if you wanted to. It's definitely going to be like you said, Pat. It's going to be original. It's going to be a lesser owned stack with Kamara and Todd Gurley, but not the way I'll go this week.
Are you in on Connor and McCaffrey even at those chalky prices? Because I am all in on Connor here. Like, I was just wrong last week. I thought there'd be some sort of split. He might not be involved in the passing game. I'm done with fading the chalk on him. I understand that this is probably the stupid way to do it. That all of a sudden that I said, you know what, he's too chalky for me at 4,500, but at 6,700, that's where the money price is for me. But just looking at the workload, the point total in this game, the way that this offense works, I think he's $1,500 underpriced, to be perfectly honest with you.
Oh, he's absolutely underpriced. Look, he's in the workhorse role for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I'm not going to argue there. I'll probably be underweight just because I'm an idiot, but I'll throw this out there. I like Antonio Brown, and if you like Antonio Brown, you think the Chiefs are going to be able to put up some points, I would just rather pay up for Antonio Brown. I feel like if there is a player in this game that might get not worked out of the game flow necessarily, but just might have like a bit of a relapse, it's James Conner. He's not quite the receiver that Lev Bell is. He's obviously works in the pass game, but no running back in the NFL is quite as good a receiver as Lev Bell. So he might have a bit of a slow PPR game. And then if he doesn't find the end zone and the touchdowns go to Brown, I think there's a path there for James Conner not to hit value. I'm not, it's a high risk play, and I don't mind taking that risk personally. I feel like since he's going to be so chalky, it's worth my while. I will have a little bit of exposure to him, but that's just the view I'm taking. If you just want to stuff him in there, it's probably the optimal play, to be honest. But that's the way I'm looking at things this week.
Leonard Fournette comes at $6,800. This is a far more difficult decision than in season-long leagues, because this game is at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. This is where you should really put the late swap to good use if you want to go down this route. I'm not playing Fournette regardless of whether he plays or not, but I think that you should leave room open to play TJ Yeldon if Fournette ends up out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just not going to take the risk there either. We've seen Fournette last year. He came in and out of games with an ankle. Now it's his hamstring. It's the same type of deal. You can definitely think about, going with Yeldon, because Yeldon will probably be like nothing owned because it's a questionable tag, right? So you can get really low ownership on possibly like a workhorse back on TJ Yeldon. But other than that, I'm not going Fournette. I just feel like there's too many other good spots this week to really have to dip that deep.
That's the whole thing. And even like I mentioned earlier, for season-long formats, like I'm just not playing Fournette. I put it this way, I'm far more comfortable with owning Fournette, having him on the bench, and all of a sudden, hey, it just turns out he was healthy. It was all smoke and mirrors the entire time, and he goes off on my bench. Rather than playing him, he plays 3 snaps and is out. Like, I don't want that. Maybe you're in a circumstance where that is the reality. You have no one better to play, but I mean, you should have drafted better.
Yeah. No, first season long, I agree. I mean, if unless you're stuck, right, then you could, or if you have like Yeldon and Fournette, you get swapped or whatever. But I would try and avoid him this week. Again, he's got the history of like coming in and out of games and not playing the full game. It's not a situation that's conducive to a big upside day, right? So
I mean, guys that you could plug in there, like Marshawn Lynch isn't a great play, but if you wanted him as like I would always have this move in my flex if I wanted to give myself more options. But I'm just looking around that price range that if you saved enough money, you could go from Lynch on to TJ Yeldon in that spot. There's probably someone right above him you can go down to as well. Just trying to see what the later games are. Man, I guess there's not a ton. At receiver, it probably makes more sense if you want to get off like Demaryius Thomas, which I actually think Demaryius is a nice play. But if you wanted to pivot from Demaryius onto Yeldon from your flex spot as a part of a late swap, and just people will, unless we know conclusively whether Fournette is playing or not, it's going to kill Yeldon's ownership. That if you late swap onto him, you could get a workhorse volume back at super low ownership. It's exactly what you'd want to do.
Yeah, you could actually Cooper Kupp would be a good potential swerve there in the flex. So almost same price. But yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. If you're looking to take advantage of the late swap, definitely could be a good spot for Yeldon because he, if Fournette sits, I mean, again, you're getting a guy at like 1% owned who's going to get a ton of work. So.
Yeah, and people just don't want to do the legwork on it. That's all it comes down to. Now, if Fournette is active, I'm just not going to play either of them on DraftKings.
No, definitely. Yeah, I wouldn't. That's the definite message from me. Don't play either if Fournette's active.
All right, so the guys that I have projected to be over 15% owned in the Millionaire Maker, and McCaffrey is really the tough one because I don't know whether he's going to be super highly owned or super lowly owned because I project everyone else around him to be super highly owned, and that means someone will end up with super low ownership that you don't expect. But in order, I have Connor, Kamara, Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, Christian McCaffrey. So if I have Melvin Gordon super highly owned, that means both David Johnson and Christian McCaffrey probably won't crack double digits. Maybe McCaffrey cracks like 14%. Like he's right on that fringe. Like one of those is wrong, and I think it's McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think McCaffrey's price is going to turn people off this week, and I'm going to take advantage. The Greg Olsen injury is something to take note of, but also just the fact that the matchup. I mean, Atlanta is just not good against guarding against the running back in the receiving game. They're one of they're consistently under Dan Quinn, one of the bottom like 5 or 10 teams in that category. So Christian McCaffrey actually saw a price increase after a slow week. I think some people are just going to look this week, and also we have Tevin Coleman opening up value on the other side of that game, who people are just going to say, well, I don't want to roster running backs from 2 running backs from the same game, so I'll just take Coleman. The matchup is better for McCaffrey. I'll say it right now. I know Tevin Coleman's going to be in a workhorse role, but you have Luke Kuechly there. The Panthers just aren't a good matchup for running backs. Atlanta is. So of that group, I agree. I think McCaffrey would be the lowest owned. He's the player I want to target there. And I just don't get the Adrian Peterson love. I just don't. You get a 0 in the pass game. If the game flow works even a little bit against him, it's just a slow day. So if he's going to be highly owned, I look at that as a positive for me because I'll have none.
Yeah, so you would go Coleman in that situation?
Over AP, yeah, for sure. Like I said, I don't love the matchup, but I recognize that Tevin Coleman is a really good receiver, right? So, and he's going to get the goal line. So for me, that bumps him above Adrian Peterson for sure.
So what do you think that does to Peterson's ownership in that spot now that Coleman has been kind of freed up? It's hard to project him out of how people are going to go onto it. Do you think he ends up higher?
I mean, yeah, it's probably going to split the ownership. So I guess AP probably isn't going to be like super chalk now. I think by the time we get to Sunday, Tevin Coleman will be more popular than Adrian Peterson. Although Adrian Peterson is one of those players. He's kind of like Ricky Fowler in golf. People remember him like, oh, he did this cool thing like back in 2010, right? And then his ownership just gets juiced a little bit by that, and he gets so much coverage on like the NFL Network or whatever, right? So I think Adrian Peterson will be semi-popular this week. He's obviously up there in tags on FanShare too. I still think Tevin Coleman, by the time we roll around to Sunday, will be more popular. But I don't think he's going to be so chalky with Peterson there that you should fade him necessarily.
Okay, let's talk about wide receivers in the big 3 of the week, at least in terms of fansharesports.com tags. We got, I didn't even write it down. I have to go look it up as I go along. I thought
Antonio Brown.
Yeah, Antonio Brown is definitely number 1 when it comes down to this. I know Quincy Enunwa is up there. Emmanuel Sanders and Quincy Enunwa are your top 3. Not the 3, or I mean, Antonio Brown's pretty easy to figure out. I guess Sanders now is the chalk. Is Sanders a better play than Demaryius Thomas at an elevated price? Like, I think side by side, if you're just like no price play 1, it would be Sanders, but it would be super close. And that way I would still, like, you get such a price discount, not such a price discount, but you get like $700 off to take DT.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an option for tournaments. Obviously, I'm not super high on Demaryius Thomas this year with Courtland Sutton working his way in and Sanders back to full health. Obviously, Case Keenum looks like he wants to work the slot a lot, and the Broncos have moved Sanders basically to like a full-time slot role. I didn't see this Emmanuel Sanders chalk coming this fast, to be honest. I'm a little bit surprised. I feel like Nelson Aguilar is a very, very easy and a very good swerve this week in tournaments. 10 targets last week. The next Eagles wide receiver that had targets was 3 with Mike Wallace. So people are a little bit scared of the Nick Foles factor. I don't think that's something to be scared of, quite frankly. Nick Foles can get it done when he's not under extreme pressure. And he's taking on Tampa last week, who just allowed Drew Brees to go absolutely nuts. So I think people are really overlooking Nelson Aguilar. That's who I would go to in tournaments this week over Sanders. I'm going to avoid Sanders this week. It was a great value play last week. A little bit of the James Conner thing, but again, Conner is more of a sure thing because we know he's going to get all the work. Sanders is involved in an offense that has 2 other pretty decent wide receivers, so he could definitely take a step back. I like Aguilar in that spot over Sanders.
Yeah, I'm with you on Aguilar as well, although you're Team Eagles, so can we actually trust what you're saying here?
No, I'm Team Nick Foles.
So I mean I like Demaryius Thomas for his price and his ownership better than Sanders, and I think that I'm not going to full out fade Sanders because I want to play Keenum. So if I'm going to play Keenum, I'm going to play that triple stack. I think that's the most logical triple stack on the board here. Like, it's very clear cut who it is. Now watch Cortland Sutton go crazy or Jake Butt get into the mix. But that's probably the way that I'm playing Sanders, as a package and a stack with the rest of them.
I think that makes sense. Obviously, if you like Case Keenum, I think you have to play him with Emmanuel Sanders, in my opinion. You can definitely play Demaryius Thomas by himself, though, because he's got the capability of just busting that one play, and he's cheaper and he's way lower owned. So makes sense there as a millionaire maker target. For the stack purposes, though, I get going to Sanders. Obviously, the Raiders down a couple O-line this week could be a bit of a domination game there, so you never know. But yeah.
So the guys that I have projected to be over 15% in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker at wide receiver, Antonio Brown, I do have projected to be the highest owned. But after that, it's like Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Emmanuel Sanders, Keenan Allen, Quincy Enunwa, and Randall Cobb. Talking about the top end guys, you heard the names Hill in there, you heard the name Michael Thomas and Antonio Brown. You did not hear Julio Jones, and you did not hear DeAndre Hopkins. And Hopkins was still dealing with a foot injury. I'm not too sure I'm buying that one, but is playing one of those guys, potentially both of them together, is that the contrarian way to attack this slate? Because as Dink and Leone always point out to me when we talk about contrarian plays, you can be stupid and you can be contrarian. This isn't stupid if you try to pack in Julio and DeAndre Hopkins into a lineup. Like, that's a perfect way to go contrarian with really good guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, of those two, I like DeAndre Hopkins more, mainly because they're getting Will Fuller back. And if you look at Hopkins' record last year, it was actually way better with Will Fuller in the lineup. And Deshaun Watson was way better with Will Fuller in the lineup too. So another triple stack that you could actually consider this week too is Watson, Hopkins, and Will Fuller. It'll be a lot lesser owned than some of these other popular stacks. I'm not as big on Julio Jones. I really feel like we saw his absolute ceiling game last week, obviously without the touchdowns. But he's such a non-lock for a touchdown every week that if he doesn't, go crazy with the catches and the targets, and it's just, you're not going to hit it. So for me, I'm kind of on team Never Julio right now. If he starts getting really consistent and starts getting like consistent red zone targets, I'll switch. But I'd go Hopkins over Julio if I had to choose.
All right, so the other guys on that were Quincy Enunwa coming off the big Monday night game, 10 targets against the Lions, Randall Cobb in the Sunday night game. It's funny, when people see these primetime games, all of a sudden they want to play these guys. They have a good game. But that's a really packed range right there, full of like a ton of talent. So like, do these guys become ownership fades? Because it's not going to be like out of control ownership. It's going to be like 13, 14, 15, 16%, somewhere around that range. But like, when you look in that area, and the other guys like Keelan Cole, who's up in price, was chalk last week. No one's going to play him against the Patriots because he didn't come through in a chalk spot. Like Jamison Crowder's right there against the Colts. You have Pierre Garçon against the Lions. And who do we have an official word on Marquise Goodwin yet?
We don't, but I think he actually missed practice today completely. So that's why I said off the top, I really don't think he's going to play this week. Just has barely practiced. And he's a player too. Like, you don't want to play Marquise Goodwin at less than 100% because he's such an explosive player, right? So you're taking away his biggest advantage out there. I agree with you with this range. It's chock full.
Hold on. It's kind of funny. People are going to watch this in sequential order, in the order that I give it to them. But I filmed the first part last. We have a talk that I do the injury report, so I'll know and have stated in the beginning of like what's actually going on with Goodwin because we'll have more information. So yeah, you can just pretend. I guess I should have cut this part out. I'm not going to though. Sorry. Back to you.
Okay. Screw Marquise Goodwin. Anyways. But no, I mean, this range is, you're right. It's a range. It's so chock full of good value. I'm not even going to worry about the ownership too much because I just feel like they're going to eat into each other enough that no one's going to get too crazy. I'm probably going to fade Enunwa this week, which kind of hurts me because I like him so much and I think he works well with Sam Darnold. But I just feel like people are a little too high on Sam Darnold last week. And I don't know. I just feel like it's a bit of a, the Dolphins didn't play that bad last week, and their secondary is pretty good. You know, they picked off the Titans 3 times, so I can see fading Enunwa. I really like Kenny Golladay, who was basically on the field for the entire game for the Lions. The Lions are 6-point underdogs. They basically have no running game. Like Stafford's going to have to throw the ball a lot, and it's a pretty good matchup against San Francisco. So I would personally rather pay down to Golladay if it's going to be a little bit less owned than Enunwa. Also, player. Oh, and Randall Cobb is kind of interesting too. I mean, I don't see the ownership on Cobb getting out of control with the Minnesota matchup and Aaron Rodgers injury, but he's in a good spot. I mean, you get Devontae Adams on the outside with Xavier Rhodes. Cobb is the man who's got the best matchup in this game, and Aaron Rodgers will have to throw late at some point because Minnesota's favorite, or he's probably going to have to. So I like Cobb. I don't think he'll be as chalky as Enunwa, and I do like Golladay. But you're right on Keelan Cole. Definitely a good GPP play. As a player who can, take it 50 yards to the house and pay off in one play. So
yeah, and he had a good game against the Patriots last year in the playoffs. Well, I'm not actually playing Keelan Cole. I just thought it was interesting that he ended up in this range. In order, the 3 guys that I really like that you probably want to go to. You mentioned Kenny Golladay. I like Devin Funchess a little bit more, then Golladay, then Corey Davis. Those would be the 3 guys that I would go to in that spot. Corey Davis was removed from the injury report, so that's always a good scene. Now, I don't know who's necessarily Mike Vrabel even came out and was just like, we might play both quarterbacks. That sounds horrific. But
yeah, what the
13 targets for like 5K, like sign me up. Let's see how many he catches.
Like, what is he planning to do? Like, just rotate them? Or that's just a horrible idea.
Maybe he plans on playing them both at the same time.
Hey, when you can get Blaine Gabbert on the field, you have to do it. You got to get more Blaine Gabbert out there.
Well, you got to use his mobility. He's so fast. Ready?
I don't think he's that fast.
Yeah. Quarterbacks. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So the top quarterbacks in terms of fansharesports.com tagging for the week: Ben Roethlisberger, Tyrod Taylor, which I refuse to do, and Deshaun Watson, which I was really surprised about because I thought Deshaun Watson would have been super sneaky after last week, but I guess people are asking me if they should drop him in fantasy, which I thought was really crazy. But I actually had Breeze projected to be the highest owned guy. But I think it's Breeze and Ben and Mahomes would be my 3 guesses the highest owned.
Yeah. I was a little bit surprised to see Ben Roethlisberger up there. Didn't start well. I know it's a home game this week, and Ben's got these awful or very positive home splits versus the road. But he's a little bit banged up. I guess the matchup with Kansas City is just so good that people are going there. It's a little bit expensive, though, $6,900. I was surprised to see Watson up there too. He was kind of like going to be my sneaky play. It doesn't look like he's going to be sneaky at all. The Titans are a really good matchup, and I guess people are just going right back to him based on Will Fuller being back. The Titans suck, and a couple other factors, and people just like Deshaun Watson. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised he's going to get up there in ownership. Again, I don't think you have to fade him because of that. Ownership never gets.
I think that might be fake news. I mean, I know the tags are there for him. I don't think he gets that high.
I don't think so either. I mean, like I said, I mean, it could be one of those spots where maybe he's projecting a little bit higher than he's actually going to be. I just, again, I think you're right. People are going to play Breeze. People like the Tyrod Taylor matchup. Obviously, they think it's like, just going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick again. They're just penciling in 35 points for him or something. And it could be, but yeah, I just can't see Watson being super chalky. So if you like him, I wouldn't get off him just because he's got a lot of tags or a couple people's ownership projections are a little bit higher. It's still a good spot. He should be lesser owned than at least like the top 3 or 4, in my opinion. So again, it's quarterback. The spreads aren't that big. No one usually gets crazy. you really like a guy, I wouldn't fade anyone either. But there are a couple of interesting players that should be really under-owned here. And I mentioned the Detroit passing game, but Matthew Stafford probably going to be throwing like 50 times a game this year. Why not? I mean, he's got really good receivers. He's another player who's really easy to stack with 2 wide receivers because all they do is throw him with Tate and Galladay or something like that, and go. I mean, that game has a pretty good projected point total too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be the lower owned of the two, but like Garoppolo on the other side of the ball, Case Keenum, I think is a pretty good play. Alex Smith is fine as well. Like, if you want to get away from Tyrod, I think those are the guys that I would go to. I haven't decided between those 3 which one I like the most, because I do worry that if Goodwin's out, that it just becomes Kittle time. We'll get to Kittle here in a second as like the most talked about guy of the week, but Keenum, Alex Smith, Garoppolo, like Watson is right around that range as well. Like, I might just play Watson, just say screw it.
I think you got a pretty good floor with Watson. People were they're criticizing his performance last week. The Patriots played good defense, and you can't really. I just never really doubt or get too down on a guy who doesn't do well against the Patriots, because they're usually really good at game planning and just limiting the big games. Sometimes it works against them, but I'm not down on Deshaun Watson after that game. People are talking about dropping him. That's insane. I mean, he still put up 40 rushing yards. That's the other thing. I mean, you have such a good floor there. And just with Will Fuller back, I mean, connected with Will Fuller, 7 touchdowns in 4 games last year. It's big. I mean, all his upside games came with Will Fuller. So it's a really big development that Will Fuller is going to play this week.
So the over 10% crowd that I had, like I mentioned, Breeze and Ben and Mahomes. I like Mahomes in this game too. And obviously he's going to be super popular because everyone sees what's going to hopefully happens in this game and all the points are scored. The next highest one I have projected in terms of ownership is actually Case Keenum. And I like Case Keenum this week. I think if you wanted to play in cash, you probably play Mahomes. But just for like floor purposes, you got like Tyrod and Keenum right there. That's probably the way to go.
I'm not as big on Case Keenum. I just don't trust the Broncos offense. Vance Joseph is just one of those coaches who he just plays to lose. And they have all these running backs back there. And if they get a lead, I just don't know how much he's going to throw. So I would much rather go up to Mahomes, even if he's going to be a little bit more popular. I would play Mahomes over Ben too. If people are, I like the Tyreek Mahomes stack more than playing Ben, paying up for Ben personally. You can still play Antonio Brown with them too, but that's just me. I think Patrick Mahomes is just a fantastic player, and he's going to be chucking it a ton all year. I just feel like the floor there is there, and he brings rushing yards too, right? So for me, I'd pay up to Mahomes over Keenum, and I'd pay down over Ben. So
yeah, I mean, objectively, I like Mahomes better than the other guys around him too, except for maybe it's Smith, maybe it's Garoppolo. Tough choices to be made at that part of quarterback. I do think that Ben is probably the play of the week, though, at quarterback.
Okay.
Tight ends. We just talked about George Kittle, and guess what? Kittle me Timbers! Coming in, the most tagged guy of the week. Everyone is playing George Kittle in this spot at home against the Lions. As you mentioned, 6-point favorites in the game. After that, it's Jared Cook, no thanks, and Jordan Reed. Like, honestly, like with it's funny because this is going to happen. I've been talking about it for like years, but like the reason to hate Jared Cook is when no one plays him, that's when he goes off. When he's super chalky, that's when he does nothing. And now I feel like everyone's kind of on board with me on this one. Not everyone. It'll be like half and half, and this will be the game where he just goes bananas and kills Denver.
Yeah, I'm on board with the Jared Cook fade. He does this once every 16 months. He catches 12 passes and he looks fantastic, and he looks like he's the second coming of Rob Gronkowski. And then the next week he drops a couple balls and he goes 1 catch for 17 yards. He literally go back and check. I mean, this is what the guy's career has been like, and he's a super good athlete, and he can definitely get it done. I understand that part of it. He's got the metrics, whatever, but inconsistent. The Raiders do have some O-line trouble too. So, I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee that he's just going to have a good game. I like Kittle, unfortunately. I'm probably just going to eat the chalk with him this week. Who do you got for other swerves though? Because I am finding it hard at tight end. I don't really want to pay up for Jordan Reed either. I just feel like he's a little bit too expensive given all the options that Washington has. But I don't know. I mean, Ricky Seals-Jones.
I think that if you pay up, Reed's not bad. I would keep paying up to Ertz if I was going to pay up at tight end.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good spot, right? I think this might be the week to pay up for Ertz. So
I see, there's your stack right there. Foles, Ertz, and Aguilar.
There you go. I like it.
The stack no one has.
Hey, it won me money back in 2013, although Zach Ertz wasn't there. Neither was Aguilar.
Let's
Bradley
see.
Cooper.
I guess like Jack Doyle becomes like the pivot play off George Kittle.
Yeah, Jack Doyle. That's kind of where I was going to. And I mean, Andrew Luck wasn't pushing the ball downfield much, and it could be obviously a byproduct of his injury, whatever. Maybe he just doesn't want to get hit 50 times a game by having to do these deep passes, which makes sense. So I think Jack Doyle's definitely in play as a swerve.
Well,
throw in a few other cheap targets. I mean, Austin Jenkins.
Yeah, I think the guy to pay down to, like at tight end, if you don't want to use George Kittle and you're scared by that ownership, we don't even know what's going to be. I have projected around like 14% because we don't know how much Jared Cook is going to get versus Kittle. I'd much prefer to play Kittle than play Cook in the spot, and I might eat the chalk with you. But it's David Njoku at $3,000. Everyone wants a part of this Browns offense, yet no one wants him. It's strange.
No, I was looking at that too. I was actually a little bit surprised by his price. I guess he dropped a couple passes week one, but Njoku's definitely in play around that range for sure. He's looked pretty good at times, and he's obviously got some upside. He drops and stuff, but if he finds the end zone at that price, I mean, you're in business. Vance McDonald is back. That's probably more of a reach play because you just don't know how many snaps he's going to play dealing with the foot injury, although he did practice in full. You could go down to like Ian Thomas or Dallas Goedert, but that's getting pretty thin.
Thomas makes more sense just because Olsen is out and he could have a role here. Like I think more people will end up siding with Jonnu Smith in Tennessee. The only one below $3,000 I would go to, and I did it last week, and he scored a grand total of 0 points. Is Ryan Griffin? Yeah, he had 5 targets, 3 were in the end zone. Like he was 2 catches away from a gigantic week, and now no one's going to use him. Like, he's not a good play, but he's someone with a lot of touchdown upside.
Absolutely. I mean, he did get 4 red zone targets last week. So he got 5 targets overall. 4 of them were red zone targets. It's kind of interesting. I mean, he didn't catch any balls, which really sucks. I can't say I've watched every single pass that he took. I know a couple of them were definitely Deshaun Watson's fault.
I watched that entire game, and then I went back and watched it on rewind because that's always the best way. If you got an iPad, just start. Well, I mean, you must have Dazn. Do you have Dazn or whatever the hell that thing's called?
Yeah, the Canadian version.
Yeah, the Canadian version of it. Yeah, so you just scroll through that and boom, it's like 9-minute games. Yeah, they were.
No, that absolutely. Yeah, no,
I mean, if Ryan Griffin was more of an athletic specimen, let's say, he may have been able to make some of those catches. He is not, however.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. I mean, at least at the very least, he's like locked into kind of like a starting role, right? And I mean, 5 targets is nothing to sneeze at for a guy under 3K. So it's definitely in play. I don't mind Goddard either. I just think it's a good matchup against Tampa, and I just like the upside with his talent.
Yeah,
Eagles don't really have any other wide receivers.
But he didn't play at all in that Atlanta game because I was on Goddard too. Like he had that, they had threw that like fade to him he had 3 targets. He played 20% of the snaps. Like that concerns me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a thin play. I mean, I'm not saying like I'd throw him in there in a cash game or anything, but he's a good upside player, and he will have his time at some point this year. So it's kind of like trying to get ahead of the curve. I'm not even sure if I'm going to use it, but I'm just, we're talking about a thin position, right? I think Ian Thomas has a way better floor, and his upside is probably very, very similar. So it's probably a better play.
I think I just play Njoku.
Probably the way to go, Pat, to be honest.
Yeah.
Probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think that is the way that I'm going to go here, depending on how much money I have left over in some of these. I might have to play that stupid Eagles stack now that I've mentioned it. I don't want to get left out in the dark on this. And it's not that expensive either. Like you pay up for Ertz, but you're like paying for Foles and Aguilar, which aren't like breaking the bank at all.
Absolutely. And I mean, just go back to last week. I mean, everyone wants to keep playing the New Orleans offense, but why not play the team that's playing against Tampa, right? So it's cheap. The targets are pretty condensed. I mean, Ertz and Aguilar are definitely the top 2 options there. Yeah, I like it.
DSTs. So defenses for the week 2 Millionaire Maker. When we look at fansharesports.com, we see the most tagged and talked about defenses of the week. We have the Chargers, we got the Jets, and then we got the Texans taking on the Titans. And again, if you want to get in the draw for some DK bucks, give the episode a like, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me your 3 favorite defenses of week 2, which 3 you would roll out there if you're playing a whole bunch of lineups. And hey, then you're in the draw to win 20 DK dollars. You might not win, but you could win. You can't win if you don't enter. So remember to do that. The like, the handle, and the 3 Ds. Chargers and Rams. If you had to choose between the two, which one would you go with?
I would go with the Rams. No Joey Bosa for me. And, the Chargers just really did not look good at all at home last week. I know it's the Bills. I mean, I know. But I would go with the Rams. I just do not trust the Chargers right now. And, again, it's a road game. And it's a cross-country road game, which, again, I know it's Buffalo. But it's a tougher spot. Definitely pay up for the Rams over the Chargers this week, especially at lower ownership.
Yeah, I like the Texans D too. I don't think that, although they're high in the tags, I don't think they're going to be super highly owned, and they can just tee off against a banged up Titans offensive line with either a hurt quarterback or Blaine Gabbert playing quarterback, either way, and no Delaney Walker. Sounds like a good situation.
I love the Texans this week. They'll be my highest owned defense by far. Definitely going to play them over the Jets. I just feel like too many people have Jets fever. I know they made Matthew Stafford look bad in one game, but it's one of those week one overreaction spots, right? They're not as good as they were week one. They're not that bad either, but the Texans D held up pretty well against Tom Brady last week. I mean, the Patriots really didn't look that great for a lot of that game. They got the playmakers. Tennessee looks like a dead fish. They got a lot of injuries to deal with. Like you mentioned, the O-line issues too. I love the spot for Texans. I don't care if they're 10, 15% owned, and they're probably not going to get more than that. So I'll be marching them out there. I think they'd be my cash game lineup play too.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to end up with. They'll probably end up around 6%. Like the two highest ones are going to be the Rams, and then it's going to be the Chargers. And I think the Redskins might be third.
Yeah, Redskins or Jets third. I could see that for sure. That's kind of what I was thinking too. So
what about Philly against Tampa? And just hope that Fitzmagic goes, reverse bipolar Fitzmagic, and the games that we're used to seeing him play. 6 picks.
Right. He just becomes Fitz. No magic. No, I like it. That was the other team I was going to mention, so I'm glad you brought it up. I don't know why we're all you shouldn't be scared of targeting Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? If he had thrown for 200 yards and 1 touchdown, everyone would be talking about the Eagles this week. The secondary isn't great on the Eagles, but that their whole defense is based on getting pressure with their D-line, which is one of the best. So if they get the pressure, Fitz will start throwing interceptions. So I like it. If I'm not paying up for the Rams, I'm going to pay down for the Eagles. And I know the Eagles will be really low this week too. So that's my other GPP target.
Yeah, I mean the Eagles are my pick of the week from the pick show. Talking about this stupid Eagles stack, talking about the Eagles defense. This can only be like a Tampa 50-3 win.
No, Nick Foles, baby. Come on. Have some faith, Pat.
I don't have any faith in Nick Foles. It's not.
I guess I'll just have to have the Nick Foles faith.
It's not the Super Bowl, Jeff. It's a game in Tampa Bay.
It's true.
This is tough here, all right? This is tough stuff. Anything to plug?
No, just, regular. Obviously, if you haven't downloaded the DK Live app, what are you doing? Do it. It's awesome. There's a bunch of stuff, updates on there, and my GPP article up on the DK Playbook as usual.
Yeah, I got exclusive vids on the DK Live app. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Oh yeah, you get some hot picks for Buffalo Wild Wings. Get them in ya, pal.
I've never been to Buffalo Wild Wings. We don't have them up here.
No, I actually went to one to go film some of these videos.
Nice.
Yeah, it wasn't even in Boston. It was outside of Boston. In one of those places where, I don't know, I don't know if they filmed Manchester by the Sea in Manchester, but it would be a place that looks like that.
Right. Just with the random Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, just outside Boston. Those places. Anyway, Geoff Ulrich, follow him on Twitter at @TheFantasyGrind. Follow me on Twitter at @ThePME, same as Facebook, same as Instagram. Subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. And again, give the episode a like, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and your 3 favorite DST plays for the Millionaire Maker in week 2. Not week 3, not week 1. Week 2, and then you're in the draw for 20 DK bucks. Thank you for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. Go and check out the rest of the shows from the week. All right? I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!